again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, because I do know this is a holiday weekend coming up and the weather's been very warm. So a lot of people have started vacations. Some people that are attending are on vacation, which is kind of a strange way to spend your vacation, watching a webinar. But hey, people are doing it. And that's the beautiful part about the webinars. Here is our group of speakers. I will be moderating this panel. So we want to welcome Elizabeth Grob from VHB, Josh Levy from Waterstone Properties, Nicole Fichera from Hourglass Collaborative, Derek Miller, the Boulos Company, and Daniel Stevenson from the city of Westbrook. That is me. I will be moderating. I am Rick Kaplan. You can see all my social media contacts information. If you are interested in connecting with me for future webinars or for our live events that will be coming up in September, you can connect with me. My email is rkaplan@nerej.com. And I want to thank all of our sponsors for today. I want to thank Waterstone Properties, Northmark, U.S. Pavement Services, Inc., the Boulos Company, and VHB. And now we are going to go to our panel. And I know we're going to be starting a little earlier than what we originally anticipated, but that's because I know everyone's in a rush to get out of town. So before we start, I'm going to let all of the speakers do a little introduction for themselves. If I can get my screen to work properly. Why don't we start with Derek Miller from the Boulos Company. Derek, if you could give us a little bit of a background on yourself.
Yeah, no problem. My name is Derek Miller. Obviously, I'm a partner with the Boulos Company. Actually started in commercial real estate down in the greater Boston area with Newmark, but have been up in Maine, which is where I'm from originally, for 10 years now, coming up on 10 years this August. So, we're a full service commercial real estate brokerage firm up here in Maine, working both, retail, office, industrial, and multifamily, kind of those asset classes. I'm also part of the team working, with Josh and Oliver at Waterstone for the CLT office component of Rock Row. So we're, very excited about that project. Launched that about a month ago and has been very well received. So excited to be here, Rick.
Thank you, Derek. Now we'll move to Elizabeth Grob. She is with VHB. And Elizabeth, why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. Great to be here today. And like Derek, I am a former Mainer, I guess once a Mainer, always a Mainer, actually. Living in Boston now, but my heart is always in Maine. I work at VHB. We provide real estate services, transportation engineering, site civil engineering. We're working with Josh and the team at Rock Row, really happy to be there. And also we do planning, so site planning services early in a development. And we have offices from Maine to Florida along the coast. And I'm really excited that we have 2 offices in Maine, so it gives me a lot of opportunity to get up there. And I'm the New England real estate leader, so I work with all of our New England offices to make sure we're coordinated and delivering services for our clients in an integrated way. So it's just really great to be here today and so much going on in Maine.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Let's move to Josh Levy from the Waterstone Property Group. Hi, Josh.
Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks for having me, and look forward to interacting and getting a chance to have some discussion today and hear from everybody and answer questions if they come up. I'm Josh Levy from Waterstone Properties Group. Started the company with two friends about 20 years ago, and we've really started as developing retail grocery anchor community centers and have evolved into more mixed use where the buildings are almost secondary. It's really about creating that experience and that street level energy and how we do that. We're in Westbrook, Maine, which is an incredible city. And I'm not just saying that because Dan is here. Dan, by the way, are you standing? You're going to be in the, I got to get a standing desk. You're going to be in the best shape of all of us here. Yeah, we're very excited about Rock Row in Westbrook, Maine, and really in the heart of Southern Portland and Southern Maine. It's a 2.5 million square foot mixed use development and what will become the premier innovation district in the state. And everybody on this call has been extremely helpful and supportive. And we're just really appreciative for the warm welcome we've gotten in the community. And we've got a lot of wood to chop, but we're excited to do it. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Josh. And we're going to move to Daniel Stevenson. And Daniel is with the city of Westbrook. And it must be a stressless job because he's always smiling.
Thanks, Rick. Again, like everyone else, pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. Yeah, if you work as an economic development practitioner, there's a lot of positive energy flying around all the time, and it's a great place to be to get a lot of stuff done. I'm a 25-year veteran in the state of Maine doing economic and community development. Worked a decade at the Maine's Department of Economic and Community Development, oversaw Maine's tax incentive programs for a while. I did a lot of policy work back then. Then as a street level practitioner, I spent about 8 years in the city of Biddeford, helping to really work, turn that community around. Now I've been in Westbrook here about 4 years, so I'm very excited because Westbrook's also my hometown. So it's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Dan. And Nicole Fichera with Hourglass Consulting?
Collaborative. Consulting works too.
I was close.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this discussion and to talk about Maine and New England. I'm a lifelong New England person. I was born in Massachusetts. I actually just moved up to northern Vermont, about as north as you can get, like our town borders with Canada. To a town of about 600 people. So it's a really new, fun New England adventure up here. My background, I'm trained as an architect originally, but pretty early in my career, I went into economic development. I helped run the Innovation District Initiative for Mayor Menino in Boston. I was kind of the on the ground, I like Dan's word, economic development practitioner. That's definitely what the job was. It was the on the ground person, sort of making sure everyone knew, what was going on and in the Innovation District and running the Twitter and stuff like that. And since then, I became an entrepreneur myself. I launched Hourglass in 2018 as like an artist pop-up series, actually. One of the things I had noticed in my career was in the innovation entrepreneurship space, tech companies, life science companies, all of these sort of things were getting a lot of support, but the artist community wasn't as much. So Hourglass started as a pop-up retail concept focused around artists and has now developed into a full creative economy consultancy. And we are part of the Rock Row team, and we just couldn't be more excited to be working on a project that has so much potential, so much transformational scope, the kind of physical assets just of the actual location in Westbrook and the quarry. I think there's a real big opportunity here. So I'll be bringing my Innovation District expertise to Rock Row and really looking forward to seeing what happens there and what we talk about today.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. And before we start, I want to mention again, and I know I'm very repetitive when it comes to this. Anyone that has any questions for the panel, you can put that in the Q&A box below. And if you have your contact information that you want to put into the chat box, you can do so. And anyone that wants to connect with you, they'll have the ability to check it out in there or contact me after the event, and we will, I can send you the information. Also, I want to tell everyone this is being recorded, and it will be up on our website, nerej.com, as well as the New York website, nyrej.com, and also on our YouTube channel. So let's start the questions off. And it's going to go from, we'll start with Elizabeth and we'll move down the chain, okay? So Elizabeth, with the states in New England starting to open up again, after over a year, how do you see the commercial and residential real estate market reacting?
Well, it's interesting. In the Boston area, I'm not sure the real estate market ever closed up during COVID. We have seen so much activity and development, and it's exciting to see it extending to Maine. And I think that's really the exciting point. There's been a lot of demand, even at the mountains. So we're working at Saddleback Mountain and Sugarloaf, really, seeing that second that home. Where do you want to go during these times? And people are really excited to be going to Maine. And so I think it has so much more to offer. And we see so many other opportunities coming down the line. And there's so many things I could talk about, and I will today, but there's so many opportunities in Maine, particularly, including wind energy and the Rue Institute and so many things. So I really look forward to walking through some of this today with this panel.
Great. We'll move on to Nicole. We have to ladies before gentlemen, even though that's probably not politically correct anymore, I guess.
We could talk about that.
But you know what? I've never been politically correct, so I get hammered for that all the time. So go ahead.
There's still
Nicole.
time for you, Rick. There's still time.
Yeah.
Rick, would you mind just reminding me what I'm talking about?
Oh, we were talking about what you were going to do on the 4th of July.
Oh, 4th of July.
No, what the states in New England are starting to open up again over a year. How do you see the commercial and residential real estate market reacting?
Well, I think that there's a lot of different things going on simultaneously, right? I think that there's some, as Elizabeth said, there's some big developments that have been able to keep going, depending on, sort of how their financing was structured and whether it fell before or after the crisis. This is something we also saw back in 2008, right? Like when the original Innovation District in Boston started, that was also coming out of a period of really severe economic recession. And the Innovation District narrative was in many ways a direct response to that, a way to kind of get things back on track and get the investment back on track, get people excited to move forward again. So I think while things have certainly been moving along, I think there's also been a lot of pain. I think there's been a lot of especially on the kind of business side of things, the small business side of things have been very, very difficult. And I think also the COVID-19 crisis revealed some things, right, about our society, about our systems, about our supply chains, about the way we use space. And I think there's a lot of questioning happening right now. The biggest thing that I'm focused on right now is what opportunity does this present? What ways can we think about rethinking our approach to commercial real estate, to multifamily, to master planning, and actually use this moment in time, not just to correct, but also to move beyond where we were before, right? We all kind of wring our hands sometimes about all the problems and we wish we could do better. Well, this is the opportunity. Like now is the time, right? We had the moment to pause and to think and to reframe our lives. Real estate, I think, is always going to be really important to people. We need places to get together and gather and work and, house our machinery and our technology. But I think it's going to be important in new ways going forward. And I think that we really have the opportunity to shape that and shape it for the betterment of humanity, beyond just kind of the scope of each deal.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. And let's move on to Daniel, because, a city, even a government, they've had a lot of issues during this.
Well, thanks, Rick. First of all, I'd like to agree with what both Nicole and Elizabeth have both touched upon. Because we're west of Portland, however, and we have the Gateway to our Cities to Rock Road project, we've not slowed down, and we're not seeing it slowing right now. At some point, it will. I think we all will recognize that. And it's both commercial and residential. And on the residential side, I think we'll get to housing in a bit, but we have the spectrum from literally affordable housing right through to luxury housing, right through from single family, right through to multi-units. But as Nicole pointed out, we are being creative, especially in the downtown spaces with the density, the mix of commercial and housing. How does it make it more walkable, and where do people want to live, and what are their experiences going to be like? When it comes to during the pandemic, unfortunately, a lot of people, depending on what they were doing for employment, were affected differently. If you were in the restaurant business or entertainment, you were shut down. So we work with them specifically to keep them afloat through the pandemic. However, I will say when it came to some of the larger deals, they just kept marching along. It's not slowed down for us. As a matter of fact, right now, in addition to Rock Row, we have nearly $100 million either under contract or queuing up for a downtown, and we're struggling finding contractors.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. Let's move on to Josh Levy.
Yeah, I think you'd asked about residential too, is even prior to COVID, we've been seeing a huge movement to southern Maine and certainly southern New Hampshire, emanating from the seacoast as well. I think pre-COVID, I mean, Redfin does a study every year of where are millennials most likely to move when they leave Boston and New York, and Portland, Maine was #1 and #2 respectively prior to COVID. I can't wait to see what the stats are now with everybody moving up to southern New Hampshire and southern Maine. So that's really driven it. We don't do residential in-house. We don't have that capacity. So we always partner with the multifamily developers on our projects. And we have had everybody under the sun looking to do projects outside of Boston. And it's been on absolute fire. But then you marry that with what Dan was saying, just being in the path of progression as people are getting priced out and pushed out of Portland creates a lot of opportunity as well. But and on the medical side too, I think a lot of hospitals are back. They suspended elective surgeries for a long time, and that took a big hit. Those are back on, and they're really investing in different programs. So there's a lot of expansion there. But the pandemic really gave us a chance to take a step back and rethink our approach. So that's where we've really evolved from just mixed use and are really leaning into this idea of creating, or we will be creating the largest and premier innovation district in the state of Maine. And Nicole could speak to this a million times better than I ever can, but if you look at what makes that up, the economic drivers, whether it's the innovation hall or the conference center and event center that we're doing, which will be the first and largest convention center in the state of Maine. If you look at the co-working space, the life sciences and incubator spaces, it's a chance to just absolutely jumpstart the economy. We have just finished a study in partnership with the city, with Remy and USM, looking at the economic output of just this project in particular with Rock Row. It can generate over $521 million to the state's GDP and have about $900 million to $1 billion of economic output. That's 5,700 jobs annually, with a net in-migration of about 6,500 workers. So it is the greatest way, and we're ready to go. We're already underway. So it's a great way to jumpstart the economy and leading with innovation to do that. And that has not slowed down. We're seeing the life sciences boom of the century happening in Boston right now, and the surrounding areas. I know Elizabeth's been working on a ton of projects with that. So we're a beneficiary of that in Maine and seeing that growth. We also have there's also, we can talk later, but a lot of innovation happening in the state with IDEX and Jackson Labs and a lot of the heritage industries, whether that be aquaculture or timber and life sciences and biotech and medtech. So to be able to leverage that in the years to come, I think is going to have an incredible impact, not just on our project, which I'm sorry, I love talking about it, but this whole surrounding area, which I think is very important.
Great. Thanks, Josh. And Derek, your thoughts?
Yeah. As the boots on the ground up here, it's been interesting to see. Certainly the residential market's been strong throughout. I live in downtown Portland, which I would say Portland is the most infamous, in Maine in terms of your walkable urban environment, that everything seemed to be trending to, pre-COVID. And I'm a big believer in those metrics, and I put my money where my mouth is and bought here, So it was interesting to see, throughout that year, as things kind of, I would say really the first 6 months as things kind of closed down, it almost made you wonder, if it would still continue that way afterwards. And I think, the proof is in, how this has all shaken out. And, even now, you're seeing concerts come back. You're seeing, we just saw Ghost of Paul Revere at Maine Craft Distilling, 2 weekends ago. So it was like the first live concert in a year. So, that is an example of just, I think, the things that make living in downtown urban areas so great are really coming back in a big way, which is very encouraging to see. The residential market up here has certainly been strong. And from a commercial perspective, we're seeing activity at really across the spectrum. The industrial market had always remained strong throughout, and really, I think, led the charge up here in Maine. Office was, slow everywhere as people kind of paused and collected themselves, but we've seen a big comeback in that asset class. Even I would say that, your QSR retailers were the most active, I would say, in Q1 and quarters 2 and 3 of 2020. And now we're seeing larger players being more active up here in Maine in the retail space. So it's been very encouraging, I would say, all throughout to see activity, really across the different asset classes that we work, really bounce back to pre-pandemic levels.
Well, thanks, Derek. And, didn't Maine close completely down for 2 months?
It was pretty quiet up here. There was tumbleweeds blowing through downtown, and you typically didn't see that before, obviously. So, it was certainly encouraging to see the way the different communities kind of rallied together and supported, these, your local watering holes and restaurants to get them through this. Those, as Daniel said, were some of the most hardest hit. So, whether it was ordering takeout and making sure that you're, supporting local, it was good to see really across the board up here. And I think, as Josh touched on, we were, I think, a big beneficiary of folks looking to kind of really reevaluate where they live and why they live there. And I think companies specifically allowed their folks to do that as they really leaned into the technology of these video conferences and meetings. And it allows folks to stay connected while they're working in different localities across the country. So, I think Maine has always been a great place to live. And I think, we saw a big influx of folks really across the spectrum moving up here just because their jobs allowed them to work remotely.
And one of the crazy things is I talked to a lot of retailers and restaurateurs that have made it through this pandemic, and a lot of them said for 2021 their revenues have gone up from years prior, even though we were closed down for quite a bit. But I guess if they sustain themselves for that short period of time, well, it's not really a short period of time. Everyone has come back stronger. I mean, we do have the issue with getting people back to work. People aren't jumping to go back to work right now. But other than that, I think, this has been kind of a boost to the economy, it seems.
Rick, we're seeing so much in the tech industry. And with a place like Maine that's just a little further from Boston, it really takes, I think, a lot of pieces coming together to create that corridor to Maine and through Lewiston, Auburn, and through all of the reaches of Maine for real estate development. Pieces like, and I think it was Sean that's here today was talking about affordable housing. And that's a huge piece, right? So that people need a place to live and be that they can afford. And the tech industry is really interested in the life sciences for the talent. They need a pool of talent, in Maine. And the Rue Institute for many is a way to attract and to grow that talent in Maine and be a feeder to so many of the real estate development projects, life sciences that are coming, that it's really exciting to see all of these pieces, because I think that is what it takes. A lot of pieces coming together to form a whole. And we can see that happening in Maine. And I think we can also talk about transportation and infrastructure needs and the challenges around that. But I do think there's a lot of critical pieces coming together at this time.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yep.
Rick,
And thank you all.
can I jump
Oh,
in?
Nicole.
I just wanted to sort of come back to this idea that everyone is coming back stronger. I think that there's quite a lot of people, certainly, that were able to grow and innovate their businesses through this. But I don't think we do ourselves any service from a strategy point of view in the industry by being overly positive about what happened here. I mean, at the same time as some businesses were able to grow and innovate and change their models and pull down new financing to get through this, a lot of businesses were lost, a lot of lives were lost in the past year. So I think that, I think that definitely takes this in slightly a more negative direction. I think typically with economic development and everything, you want to be sort of really positive about the going forward, but the reality of what happened here is multifaceted, right? And in order for us to create meaningful strategies to move forward and to learn and grow from what happened, I think it's important to actually have that holistic view of what happened here. And also really being specific about who was able to succeed and who wasn't too, because I think that also breaks down on some justice lines that really need to be examined.
Well, thanks, Nicole. Now we're going to get to the real exciting part of this webinar, because I can see Josh is just so excited to start talking about this. Now let's, excuse me, let's talk a little bit about Rock Row and Westbrook and what's happening there, which is quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you. We started in 2017. If everyone remembers, it was an abandoned quarry and mining site, fenced off, right at the front door to Westbrook and Portland off of I-95. We love the access with two highways coming into it, love the communities of Westbrook and Portland and what that could be. And it was scheduled to be slated to be a Walmart anchored strip mall. And so the first thing we did was rip up those plans and toss them out, and really went back to the drawing board. I always talk about, we did a research and discovery tour going to 27 different cities and towns across the U.S., looking at what works, what doesn't for mixed use that we can bring to bear here. Looked at transit solutions and how to fit into the network, and have really started to look at the innovation side as well. And at the same time, formed 36 local partnerships that we're really proud of, whether that's Downtown Discover Westbrook, or My Place Teen Center, or Visit Portland, or the Muskie School at USM for sustainable development and environmental design. But all of that being said, that's really what led to the birth of the project, and we're trying to respond to the needs that are here. And we've opened our phase 1 in August of last year. That's with the Market Basket supermarket, which just passed their millionth customer. They're the #1 grocer in the state of Maine and top 25 in the US. We're very proud of that fact, and are under construction with REI and many others. And have announced a medical campus with New England cancer specialists and Dana-Farber. And we're wrapping an entire comprehensive medical and research campus around that. So you don't need to drive all over Greater Portland when you're going through something like that. You can have diagnostics and lab and sports medicine and PT, infusion bays, advanced imaging, primary care, specialty care, urgent, pharmacy. So really creating a great campus feel on that side. But as we move it forward with the mixed use and the innovation, we're really focused on moving forward the different drivers that I mentioned. We announced an 8,000 person enclosed concert venue and convention center in partnership with Live Nation and ASM Global. We're very excited about that. Looking at life sciences and creating wet lab space, co-working space, and shared modular labs. And then now we're really excited about, we just announced with Derek and his team, the state's first cross-laminated timber building, which is a very sustainable product. And I'll never get the stats right, but there was this Harvard study that showed 39% more productive, 29% lower levels of stress, and 44% happier workers, but showed a efficiency of $6,500 per worker in a knowledge worker in a cross-laminated timber building because of the positive environmental effects it has. So we've really been spending a lot of time talking to employers who, at the end of the day, they're telling us they want to be able to recruit and retain talent. So can we provide an environment in which they want to do that? And we support that through the tech and life science programming, the other family events we have on, all the amenities with 26 restaurants and a food hall and entertainment and housing and daycare and outdoor recreational opportunities. So we're trying to figure out how do you support that and create that ecosystem and really strengthen it and give it resilience for the long term. So a lot happening. It's, as I was mentioning, 2.5 million square feet. It's a $700 million project. We are not trying to boil the ocean at once. So it's individual phases, but there's a whole master plan that we're growing into with the city's help and the surrounding communities.
Not to mention the beautiful quarry that's right there.
Our insurance agents told us to fence it off and run for the hills. It's a 5,000 feet around. It's a 26-acre quarry that's 400 feet deep. And we shut the pumps off when we bought it. It was being mined for over 100 years. The aggregate for the turnpike, for the runway at the jet terminal, the jet port came from that quarry. And we shut the pumps off. It's already 200 feet full of water. And we are going to turn that into the most amazing cultural amenity that we've ever seen. So we're really excited about putting trails around it, having great interactive shows. But if we can get the public in and out of there safely, which is what we're looking at now, that opens up pond hockey tournaments. We have a group that wants to do the world's first sailing stadium. REI is pumped about doing kayaking, and our marketing director wants to put a floating barge in there, floating bar. So it's almost an endless opportunity. I saw Dan smile on that one. There's almost an endless opportunity of what you can do if we can engage the quarry. And we've worked with the Muskie School and some folks at MIT on, can we harness some of the environmental qualities from a sustainability point of view, whether that's tri-generation with the heat load and other things. I'm going to start to get over my skis on this, but very excited about the sustainable features of this quarry that was taken from for 100 years, right? Now, can we restore it and bring it back to life and make it a cultural net positive?
Great. Thanks, Josh. So let's move on to Derek, because Derek is probably the other guy that's trying to find everyone to get interested in this project and move in. And
well, for sure. Yeah, I echo Josh's excitement, and it's one of those things that you almost have to kind of see to believe. I know as someone that's lived in the greater Portland area for 10 years, it's different when you get there and you get the chance to experience the quarry and the beautiful blue color of the water and having that be the centerpiece of this project, I think is what makes it so unique and so special, to kind of echo Josh's sentiments. Once you're there, just looking into it, it is kind of awe-inspiring with the color and how it just kind of connects the whole project. So we've got a beautiful EYP designed building, and the CLT aspect of it is very unique to Maine. This will be the first CLT constructed office building in the state of Maine. And for me, that, personally, I also have a background in architecture before coming over to the dark side here, that is commercial real estate brokerage. And it was just super, exciting to see a new construction type. And I think when you look at the plans that our architects have come up with, there's a warmth to this type of construction that you don't necessarily get with your typical steel and concrete construction. Not to knock that in any way, shape, or form, but it's a different feel. It's very uniquely Maine. I think too, which is great, you know, in terms of the really embracing the timber heritage that this state has, and you know, the hope and the plan is that obviously the community embraces it and is as excited about it as I am. But you know, we're very happy to be partnering with the Waterstone Group and bringing a unique project like this to fruition, you know, and as Josh said, there's a lot of proverbial wood to chop here, and we're really excited that we have all the, you know, community partners that we have, and this, you know, the great development partner that we have in Waterstone to bring this, you know, dream to a reality.
Great, thanks, Derek. Let's move on, because we're talking about innovation. Let's move on to Nicole, because that's your thing, innovation. Let's see how you put this into perspective.
Just thinking innovation relative to real estate in Maine. Is that the question?
Well, the question was talking about Rock Row and you know, what's happening there. But you know, we're talking about the innovation that, well, Josh and Derek were talking about different innovation that is coming into this play for this project, and that's what you discuss.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Rick. So innovation, I think, is it's a word we've all heard a lot, right? I think it's one of those words that it in many ways, at least for me, I've used it so much that it sometimes loses its meaning a bit. But I think that when you break it down to kind of what are going to be the innovations that actually matter, right, to this place, you can start to get more specific. And I think that the CLT is a great example of a way that you can think holistically in a real estate project about every choice you make and how that thing is going to kind of give back on a number of different vectors, right? So with CLT, I think what's really cool about it is that obviously, you know, it has that sort of technological cachet. You get that narrative you can talk about. People are always excited about a new material, a new invention. Josh's statistic about the happiness levels and everything is, I mean, that's amazing. I would love to see where that comes from. That's really fascinating. So knowing that you'd be able to make kind of a good working environment. But I think for me, what I think is most interesting about it is when you think about economic development, very often the first things that come to mind are like, you know, jobs, jobs, jobs. Like, let's move the jobs in, move the jobs in. And I think that if you can land a big company or like a certain number of jobs or certain number of jobs or certain sector, those are the success metrics, at least in the economic development worlds that I've kind of come up in. When you think about something like CLT and how that might layer in for economic development, there's this narrative side, but there's also the idea that the literal construction, the literal investment in the building itself, which is a generational investment, can actually be giving value back into the Maine economy, into the heritage industries like timber that sometimes get left behind in the innovation conversation. So I think that for me, the next stage of thinking about innovation in real estate is a holistic one, right? Where we can say, are we working with innovative companies? Yes, great. Are we working with them in innovative ways? Are we pushing ourselves as a retail team, as a leasing team, as a real estate team, as a design team? Are we looking for innovation within our own work? And then are we also looking for ways that every dollar we spend can be spent in innovative ways so that that dollar value is being recaptured back into a local economy? You know, I mean, how many projects have we all built and been a part of where who knows where the investment in the construction materials is going, right? That's not something that we've ever really focused on and kind of controlled from an economic development and community investment perspective. So I think that the idea of this CLT building being not only kind of an innovative move on its own from a technological standpoint, but also sort of a symbolic move to say that what we're going to try to do here is be intentional with every one of our investments, knowing that building and that dollar can do more to further the goals that we're moving towards. So I think that kind of targeted, holistic innovation strategy that actually is grounded in the place and in the community and what comes from there, and literally the materials that grow from the dirt in Maine, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that excites me. And certainly we're going to be excited about startups and medical innovations and everything you always hear about in the innovation conversation. But I think we actually have a chance to move beyond that, and examples like this are a good step in that direction.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. Elizabeth, you have some input into this Rock Row project. Let's hear your perspective.
I think it's probably the start of a lot of development in this area. And I think the support from the development is really the pieces that Josh laid out, right? It's the community involvement, and it's listening to the community first and foremost. And so I think it's really interesting to hear the story of how the project evolved. And it's the partnership with Westbrook. I mean, it's the working partnership with Dan and his team. And it's all of those pieces that we see again and again in different communities, that it's so important to come in, do your community outreach, and really work with the city or the town, and then know the piece of land that you're getting, right? Because it presents so many opportunities and challenges. I love hearing about the rock quarry. Many would have just said, it's a quarry, we're done with it and move on with life. And yet it's making its way into a piece of a part of the story that is so important for this project, and then others, in the future coming to Maine and looking at that holistic approach of a project. So I think, when we think about Rock Row, we think about those opportunities and how it's been done really well, and is a success story that will attract more development, more developers to the area. I mean, the margins in real estate in Maine are different than the margins in Boston. And so knowing the land that you're going to get and what are the opportunities and challenges on it before you commit to it is critical. So we're working with a lot of our clients to let them know what, if you start today, how long is it going to be before you put a shovel in the ground? Because that's critical and important. So it's really knowing the site, which this team has done so well and made an amazing journey from it, and so much more to come.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Now, the city that probably is benefiting from this Westbrook project, Dan, what's your perspective on what's going on here?
Well, the first thing is Josh knows how to make lemonade, so that makes us happy. Once they came to us and said that quarry is an asset, not a liability, I knew they were onto something. But it does go back. So when you step back to 2017, and you look at the way they approach the due diligence on that site, typically developers will come in and they look at how they maximize impervious areas, and then they can get the highest and best uses in those areas to cash flow a project or a deal, right? They did just the opposite. They looked about, how do we move people around this site? How do we get transportation systems in and out of the site? How do we make it walkable, usable? How do we, as we look at building it out in our master plan, the UN's goals for sustainability, how many of those do we touch upon, which some of you have just talked about a bit as well. So as part of this, and they bought full trust in, not with just city staff, but with the council. We're getting unanimous votes from the council as a partnership for this project. It's a very large project. And I think for anyone that has grown up and lived in Maine their entire life, like me, when you hear $600 or $700 million of investment, sometimes it's hard to get your arms around. It's also Maine's first true 21st century project. And I think some people struggle. They're not sure what to think about it. They're like, what is this thing really going to be? So the vision from Josh and Waterstone and the team you're hearing here, the execution that's happening to place helps and continues to build trust with elected officials as well as staff. And, putting these partnerships together, it's important not just to talk about them, but it's important to execute, whether it's getting the TIF district and the overlay districts, a contract zone, all of them demonstrate the trust and that we want to be full-on partners in the community. I also see part of my role is to continue to work with our regional partners, Greater Portland Council of Governments and others Josh had named, like Visit Portland and Chambers, as well as the administration at state level, we all have a stake at this. This project supports all of Maine, right? Not just Greater Portland and clearly Westbrook. So we're very excited about it. We continue to partner. The city will continue to put its money where its mouth is as well. But I do think it's really, really important to understand this is a few years of really, really difficult work to get them where they want to be. And, you know, just the infrastructure cost offsite as well as on-site with some pretty heavy lifting. So we are excited about this project. We're 100% committed and on board with this project as well. So we will continue to work as it grows and gets to be a great place.
Could I just add to that? That's a great point, Dan, about developers, and we've been guilty of this many times, coming in and just trying to maximize every square foot of impervious area. And don't get me wrong, this is going to be a very dense project. We're always looking at density and trying to create verticality, but and I was not popular in our office for saying this, but we decided we're going to lead with the trails. We're going to create all these parking decks to get people consolidated and out on foot and walking around, looking at how people are moving around the site, and with Elizabeth and her team, the region, and creating plazas and green space and connecting into the Portland Trails network around us. Those are all non-revenue generating activities, but we're trying to look at it holistically, the ecosystem that we're trying to create. And whether it's a sustainability approach, creating a sense of community, trying to create a vibrant place with vitality and street life and energy. And I think that's exciting to do anywhere throughout the state. And same thing for New Hampshire, because there's so many opportunities to engage with the outdoors, to engage with the arts, and really lead with those types of what I would call cultural assets, as opposed to just maximizing every inch and square foot of the bricks and mortar. And I hope I'm not wrong, because I always say I'll be living in the bottom of the quarry if I am, but I hope that the end result will be better by focusing on those things first.
That's why they make houseboats.
Yeah.
We talk a lot. Well, I talk a lot about life science companies and life science projects throughout New England and New York. It's such a hot topic. But life science companies and development projects are finding interest in the state of Maine. What's attracting them to the state of, and what regions are they looking at?
Rick, can I jump in first here just to say that Westbrook already has a small cluster now. When you look at IDEX's world headquarters is in Westbrook, Maine right now. Abbott Labs expanded into Maine over a year ago. Artel has been here for many, many years, and Clear H2O is doing their expansion all in the same area now. We want to continue to grow from that. I just wanted to pop that in too. It's not new to Westbrook or Maine, but it is growing. Thank you.
Well, I was going to start the conversation off with you anyways, Dan. So, the floor is yours.
Even better. Clearly, I know Nicole really works in this world, but she's correct. You know, we're just a stone's throw to Boston, right? And so when she talks about placemaking, what do people want to be? What do they want to live? What do they want to do? Do they want to get out of Boston? Don't get me wrong, we love Boston. We're fans of Boston. But you're not far away. And as we grow our transportation networks with alternative modes of transportation, what is it that's going to, quite frankly, attract younger workers to Maine? We're the oldest state in the nation right now. And we have the ability to grow, and we want more talent in the workforce as well. And I think that some of the tech companies that are here as well, the life sciences, continue to grow right now. And so we can continue to partner and grow with them. So that's, I'll hold right there. I just wanted to say that, you know, we do have a great anchor to start with. And the development of the site, what I like, you know, one of the things we don't do so well sometimes in the public sector side, but we do here in Westbrook, because we have Maine's first business retention expansion program, is we go out to the companies and ask them what their needs are by industry sector. We don't play pretend that we think we know what the problems are and solve them. And then it's easier to respond to and work with growing the infrastructure, including the housing and all of the space needs and what they need for workforce. So then companies want to stay, but not just come, stay and grow. So they just are part of the fabric of our community. That's how we look at it here in Westbrook, certainly.
Well, thanks, Dan. Let's go to Elizabeth. What do you how do you feel on the life science moving to
Well, I think
Maine?
what Dan was talking about is the quality of life, right? It's a quality of life in Maine that is special. And it's an amazing place, but that's not enough for life sciences to make the trek up. There's already a cluster, and that's what they're looking for. So they're looking for to be amongst other life sciences. They really want that excitement and the pool of talent and the exchange of ideas. So I think it is important that there is this.
Uh-oh, we lost you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay. I think it's already important that there is a cluster there, but that is going to attract other people there. And the other pieces, like the Rue Institute, I think is a critical piece in training folks in Maine, because they need folks to work at the life science industry. So it's really the training, the tech talent, and training Mainers who are in search of better paying jobs is a real piece of that. And then having the affordable housing and workforce housing pieces in place as well. So, and then finally, there's a transportation piece. And how are these people going to move around the city? Do we intend for them, to drive everywhere, or can we creatively, with infrastructure support, build a system where people have transportation from their job to amazing downtown Portland, to Westbrook, to Rock Row? How are those pieces being put in place in a regional and federal way to support future development and life sciences? So I think it's a lot of pieces coming together right now in Maine, and the deals in, there's a lot of land that's available. It is not a shortage. And here in Boston, we're seeing all the easy projects basically are done, right? So we're doing, air rights development and redevelopment of malls and other things that have been, whereas in Maine, I think that there is an availability of land and huge opportunity. And now these pieces are coming together. So it's really those combinations of things that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think as we look at, it would echo everything that Elizabeth and Dan said. And as we look at life sciences, really, I'd say 4 things are jumping out at us. It's the quality of life, right? If we're trying to recruit that family from Palo Alto, where are we going to live? Something we learned from David Shaw, who founded IDEX, who's been an incredible resource on this for the project and the state's innovation economy, is the hardest challenge he had was finding work for the spouses of the scientists that were coming. So that's just as important, making sure we have the jobs available. And then as from an employer point of view, they want to be able to really recruit and retain that talent. So can we provide the environments to do that, and the scalability of it too within that, right? I mean, to be able to go from a small 10,000 square foot wet lab to grow your business, to have an office component, but then to be able to do GMP manufacturing. And that's something that Westbrook offers, is you can have all of that right nearby, which is very important to a lot of the companies. The second thing would be, it's not just the large anchors, which of course we want, need, and are pursuing, but it seems like that used to be the case in the 70s and 80s, where it was all about just getting that one large employer to the town. And that's where you get a lot of sprawl of these office parks and not a lot of resilience if, God forbid, they went out of business. But we think it's combining that with the smaller clusters. And there's such a great opportunity to incubate businesses within Maine. There's so much talent here. There's so much that we can grow and start at a smaller level and help incubate and grow in that continuum and provide the space and opportunities, infrastructure to do that. When people talk about life sciences, it's always the low-hanging fruit of bioscience, med tech, and we're certainly going after that. And I think there's opportunity for that. We're getting interest. But what about the heritage industries of Maine? And this is, I'll let Nicole jump on this, because she really opened our eyes to look at timber and aquaculture and all the amazing things. Everyone wants to create an innovation district, but how can we really differentiate and scale it? And I think another part of it too, and Oliver could speak to this, would be re-educating the world about Maine is not just lobster rolls, restaurants, and vacation land. Sure that we have, there's 40 million tourists a year coming here, but there is an incredible innovation economy and there's an incredible story to tell that we'd love to put that on display. And I think we could be a catalyst, but there's a lot already happening that we can grow together.
Yeah. Josh,
Nicole, before you start, because I know you're anxious to talk about this, but I wanted to get Derek, because Derek is probably dealing a lot with these actual companies, because they're contacting him for you know, where can we build our labs, and where, you know, so I just want to get his perspective on that, and then we'll move to you, okay?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Maine has always had a strong footing in this. When you look at the folks like, you know, Jackson Labs and IDEX, you know, Covetris, you know, building a new headquarters in downtown Portland. But, you know, to Josh's point, I mean, I think, you know, Cambridge didn't happen on accident in terms of being the hub for you know, biosciences and life sciences in the greater Boston area. So, you know, it is about educating your workforce and you know, to you know, one of the folks mentioned in the chat, and it's about keeping them here once they've either gone away to educate themselves or done it here in Maine. You know, I think we've seen, aside from you know, all the excitement around RU, you've seen UNE and USM both making very significant investments in growing the you know, what they have for programs to offer students, and also just large infrastructure projects to make their campuses more you know, accessible, and you know, creating a great community for the students to live in and learn in when they're there. So I think it's you know, those things, and you know, Maine, the unique part of what we've always had to offer is the way of life up here. You know, I'm one of the folks that is from here, went away to go to college, and by all accounts, you know, I went to school down at Tufts and right outside of Boston, and thought I would spend the rest of my life living in the greater Boston area. And then, you know, you're down there for a couple of years and had a unique opportunity come to me up here in Maine, and have basically never looked back. So it's I think just getting that word out in a way that will resonate with people, because I think once you get up here, there's a lot to like about our way of life. So with that, I'll defer to Nicole.
Okay, Nicole, I leave the best for last. Okay.
So complimentary. No, I you know, this topic is really exciting, and I think that as everyone has said, Maine has all of the pieces that you would want to lay the foundation for a successful life science narrative, right? Like, come work here. We have top-notch research institutions. We have material laboratories. We have manufacturing capacity. We have talent. We have talent growing institutions moving into town. We have quality of life. We have lobster rolls. We have everything you could need, right? And that's already there. We have that to work with. So I think in terms of looking at strategy and going forward, I would say that there's two areas to really pay attention to as far as life science. And one is, what is the ecosystem strategy? And the second is flexible infrastructure. So as far as the ecosystem strategy, that for me, that means not just within kind of Portland, Westbrook itself, and not just within Maine itself, but in terms of looking at a life science network that includes Boston, Cambridge, that includes New York City, that includes all of these different research institutions that are throughout New England and beyond. What is Maine's unique role in that ecosystem? What can Maine deliver from a cost perspective, from an adjacency perspective, from an access to transportation perspective, from an access to material perspective? If we can drill down and get really specific about Maine's role in a larger life science ecosystem that moves beyond the borders of the state, then now we're going to get deals signed, right? Because a research institution or a large life sciences company, they have multiple places that they need to get stuff done, right? They've got researchers in a hospital over here, they have a lab over here, they have an office here, they have manufacturing here, and there's a role that Maine can play in that kind of overall approach, and that specificity is really going to matter in terms of getting these deals signed and creating a productive ecosystem that's going to be generative of value for the economy and for people for a long, long time. So that's the ecosystem component. The infrastructure component Josh brought up, and I'm so glad that Josh, you brought up the idea of scalable infrastructure, because so many people right now are building lab buildings on spec, right? Like, there's a lot of spec lab buildings. buildings that exist in the world. There's enough spec lab buildings being built that, you know, some real estate reporters and things are saying things about life sciences bubbles. And it's good to just pay attention to that stuff in the background, because what really is important here is to realize that not every life science company is going to take the same, you know, square footage plate with the same kind of lab space and be able to sign that deal at a 15-year lease or whatever and get it all done. What we really need to be thinking about is not only how do we support those companies, but how do we also support growth companies, spin-offs, all of the stuff that is sort of bubbling up in the innovation ecosystem. Those are going to need very different things. And in sort of business or tech or creative innovation, it's pretty easy to service those from an infrastructure standpoint. Folks just need like a laptop and a desk and like a plant, and they're pretty good to go. Life sciences is not the same at all. So what we have to be thinking about is specific strategies for, like, if you are just spinning out a company from your university, what kind of bench can you afford? Right? Like, what are the IP considerations if you are sharing a space with someone else and trying to report to your investors that you're doing something that's going to be protected in the future? What are the growth considerations to think about as you grow from having a bench or two and a couple of resources, but maybe then you get your first funding round and now you've got to hire 40 people, you know? When I was the general manager of District Hall when it was launched in Boston, and one of the first things that happened there is a life science company called Carex that was across the street. They went through this exact process. They went from being like a 12-person company to all of a sudden needing to hire like 50 people in 6 weeks due to a funding round. And their office wasn't ready. And so they were bunking with like a venture capital firm. They ended up parking themselves in the District Hall lounge for like 4 weeks and paying us in bulk so that they could use our conference rooms while they grew during this critical period. And we were glad to be there for them, but that's not an ideal scenario for a company like that, right? To be like parked in a coffee shop for 6 weeks while you're doing one of your most critical recruiting pushes in the world that you've ever gone through, excuse me, not in the world. So that infrastructure component requires strategy, it requires design, it requires a lot of forethought. And as Dan said, direct communication with these companies, right? We can't be thinking that we know it all just because we've built a couple of lab buildings in the past. We don't know anything, because this industry changes year after year, day after day, really, really fast. So those are the two things I think about. What's the ecosystem strategy and how does Maine fit in? And what's the flexible infrastructure play and how are we making that work for companies as they scale?
Very interesting, Nicole, because, you know, you're absolutely correct. You know, I know that, you know, if you don't find out what your clients or your customer or the companies that are looking to expand or to just try to attract them, if you don't ask, you never know. You know, you can only guess at what they're looking for, and that's costly to do, especially in real estate. You know, with all the great real estate developments attracting more companies in the area, like in Maine, affordable housing and just housing in general is now needed. Is there a plan in place to accommodate the need? And the second part of the question is your transportation needs, public transportation. And I'm going to start this with Elizabeth, because we had this little conversation prior that, you know, affordable housing, low-income housing, workforce housing, you know, it's all, not everyone understands what that's all about, you know, so we can talk a little bit about that as well.
Sure. It's such an important piece, Rick. It's what makes everything tick and come together. And it's all different kinds and types of affordable housing, including all of the TIF and different tax credit plans and how a city or town supports a development and facilitates that connection in those markets to developers. We work in the Boston area with some pretty sophisticated developers who are using a lot of tax credits, rebuilding the old mills. So I was listening earlier to, you know, those opportunities, and then also seeing really innovative ways of looking at large development opportunities for affordable housing. There's been two that we're working on in Boston. both have been housing developments or, housing projects, if you will, that, there are 1,700 units on each development, one in Charlestown and one in Boston, South Boston. And they're coming in, and with these partnerships, they're redoing all of the housing and then putting in market rate housing as well. And those are partnerships with the city of Boston, and those are partnerships with federal funders, and those are partnerships with so many other people. And I see that working in Maine, where that it really takes a lot of pieces coming together to create that necessary housing for the folks that are going to work and live and play in all of these developments. So having, again, the city or town be supportive and be creative and have a developer that we're working and partnering with, and a team that understands that you've got to figure out these things early on too, because the way you develop your building, the way that you might manage moving forward might change some of your accessibility to those funds. So we see it as being so critical.
And I know not everyone's going to be able to talk to this point on the panel because they don't really deal with a lot of the housing or multifamily industry. So if anyone doesn't feel comfortable talking on it, we can just move on from that.
I'll jump in real quick, and I would say it's to kind of build off what Elizabeth said. I think when it comes to affordable housing, really everybody in the community has a role to play.
Yeah.
And beyond just, the folks that work in the municipalities themselves, the developers who are obviously putting these programs in place, but the residents, in these communities, I think play a large role because, I think that a lot of times, when these projects are announced, the knee-jerk reaction is to, there's a lot of opposition that kind of comes up as a groundswell. And I think folks need to really look at why they are opposing some of these projects. And growth is natural. It's good for these communities. And it's going to lead to bigger and better things when we have these things in place that can really grow the community as a whole. So, you see it in terms of, quote unquote NIMBYism, from some of these projects that are announced. So I think, as you're, a resident in these communities where these projects are planned or announced, really look at why, you're opposing these things, and get on board. These are things that are good, that will benefit everybody. And the municipalities themselves certainly have a big role to play in the requirements for affordable housing developers. We work closely with Avesta Housing, who's one of the largest, affordable housing owners and developers here in Maine. And, they do a great job in this. So, certainly I think a very important aspect to growth in general.
Thanks, and thanks, Derek. I appreciate it. And what other people, I've been involved in many tax credit deals in my career, and where it really starts is with education in the community, to the community members, as well as the elected officials, because you'll hear a lot about workforce housing and affordable housing, and what's the difference, and what's 100% of area median income versus 80% of area median income, and depending on what your capital stack looks like and where your funding sources are coming from, how does it all play together? There are a number of tax credit housing developers in the state that are seasoned and they know what they're doing. I've done a number of deals in Biddeford and in Westbrook. One of the things that's so important that the surrounding communities around Portland have really learned to understand it is that as your urban core grows and your housing gets more expensive, it pushes the workforce out, right? So this is a whole big thing about keeping your workforce there. I will like to preface a little bit by saying it's important not just to focus on affordable housing. You still need the whole spectrum of housing opportunities in your community when you look at a holistic approach, as Nicole would talk about earlier. But right now, that seems to be a big need. So the easiest way to explain it, I think when it comes to elected officials, is to say the cost of construction is the same. You have to buy down the capital costs in order to make the housing affordable. That's why you see all of these tax credit programs in place. If you're in Old Mills, you're using historic tax credits, both state and federal. If you're not, you're using affordable housing tax credits and affordable housing TIFs. Westbrook is way ahead of the curve on it. We partner with our housing authority on this. We meet regularly. We have a plan on where our housing is going to be, how we're going to grow our housing. And don't forget, it's not just workforce housing. We have a huge issue with senior housing. You know, our seniors want to stay in our community as well. And so we really need to look at the entire spectrum. But if the focus is on workforce, we as staff, as well as with the developers, look at where the growth of our city is going to be. Transportation systems and networks, which you talked about. We invest in our trail systems and our Riverwalk, a connectivity with downtown and Rock Row, the metro. We look at everything. Rail. We really try to stay on top of all of it. So not just where people live, but how they move. But we also look at where our future growth is going to be, not 10 years from now, 50 years from now. We start looking at building that infrastructure in place now. So we like to take a lot of pride in Westbrook to think that we're ahead of the curve, especially when it comes to affordable housing.
I think.
Hey,
Sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
Mind if I just jump in? I'm so sorry. I've got a hard stop at 11:30, so I'm going to have to drop. But I'd love to just share one thought on this affordable housing conversation. I think that this is an area where innovation is really needed, and there's huge scope here to do better than folks have done in the past. And I think that we need innovation. You know, when you look at housing innovation, I think usually what you kind of see is like, you know, people drawing cool floor plans and they get smaller and smaller and they do all of this stuff. There's a lot of visual and kind of design innovation that comes up. But where we really need innovation here is on the financing side. We need innovation on the financing side. Every time I have these kinds of conversations, I am waiting for some real estate financier to stand up and say, I want to talk about this more. I want to figure out this problem. Because if, you know, in Boston, when you hear about why can't this be affordable, it's like land costs, land costs, land costs. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like Boston's like, you know, it's expensive. I get it. We don't have that same problem everywhere, but we have the same conversations everywhere. So I think that Derek's point about, you know, looking at why people are pushing back, that's really important. We need some sociological examination around that as a culture around these projects. We also need innovation on the financing side, because if you can't do it with cheaper land costs, still there's a problem. And the problem is coming from the bank side a lot of the time. They're looking for something that just isn't going to be possible to make it affordable for human beings. And so we need to fix that. This is a society problem, like across the board. We have people that need housing, that deserve housing, that have a right to housing. We know that there are folks in these communities that are not housed currently, or that are not housed as well and as safely as they should be, as they deserve to be. And I'm just, you know, this is a broad call. If folks know real estate finance folks that want to get in a conversation about this, my door is open. Like I want to talk about how we can fix this problem from the money side, as well as from the permitting side and the design side and all the things that normally come up around this issue. I dropped, so
yeah, great. That's fine, Nicole. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Nicole. Rick, I just really need to add to that. The bottom line, like transportation, unless it's subsidized, it won't work. I've had this conversation for 15 years with people. I've been in and around the industry and I've put hundreds of deals together in my career. The only way to really break that affordable housing piece, it is land costs, but it's more than that. It's construction costs, it's cost of labor, it's everything. It has to be subsidized in order to do it. It's more than just the cost of borrowing money. So I would just like to, I'd love to do a whole piece on housing when we get a chance. But I will say this, as how all of this stuff ties into the Rock Row place, we in Westbrook understand the people that are going to be working on the Rock Row site, we want to help them and work as a community, help buy down those costs so we can keep our people living in our community that are going to be working and living out on the Rock Row piece. I think that's really important.
And I think Dan's absolutely right that you can't just legislate it, mandate it, that there's got to be true public-private partnership. Mm-hmm. I love your point about you need the whole continuum of housing, and affordable is important, workforce in the missing middle, market rate, senior, subsidized, as well as let's not forget student or grad student housing, which is really important, right? And we've been having a lot of conversations. We're working with Campus Flats to do grad student housing in partnership with UNE and USM and others. And they have the infrastructure with the Husky line and the UNE medical bus. That's helpful. And then to Kyle's question, can we get them to stay in Maine too? So I think if you're looking at a family's entire bottom line and affordability, if we can create environments where people don't need a car and we can provide the jobs there as well, that can help reduce costs. If we can provide jobs with higher pay, we're talking about life sciences I think the stat is 2.5 times the double, or almost double the average salary for a traditional knowledge worker job, and creates 3.4 halo effect jobs as well. If we can provide, some job training, we're looking at maker space, craftsman space, incubator, and the innovation hall. And if you can help provide that, you can help add to a family's bottom line, either accretively with income by creating the jobs, or helping reduce the costs. And that's where transportation becomes important. That's where helping with job training and other things become important. And we're excited to see how you can fit into that. And then if you can take it even broader with creating healthy environments and this whole idea of preventative medicine and keeping people out of the healthcare system. And if you look at the skyrocketing healthcare costs, we're having conversations all the time with our healthcare providers that people have more control over their deductible. And if you're responsible for that first $6,000 on your medical plan, can we provide an MRI to you for $500 instead of the $3,000 it costs at the hospital? So keeping people out of the healthcare system as well, and things we can do to create healthy environments, get people out and about and exercising and eating healthy with the food as medicine programs we're looking at with New England Cancer. I mean, those are all, that's a little bit more macro, but it has an effect at the end of the day.
Well, thank you all. We ran out of time 5 minutes ago, but we could go on for another hour. I still have additional questions to go through, but I want to thank all of you for spending the time with us this morning. I want to thank everyone that attended, and I hope everyone enjoys their 4th of July. It's been well-deserved. Everyone's been waiting over a year to have a celebration like this. Well, enjoy and be safe. I want to thank our sponsors for today, VHB, Waterstone Properties Group, the Boulos Company, U.S. Pavement, and Northmark. I want to wish everyone a happy 4th of July and be safe.
Great to see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Take care, folks.